If a man also lie with mankind. Man lie with mankind. As he lied with a woman.
The suffering really comes from when we're not seeing ourselves as one person. Not realizing that when I hurt, you hurt. Marriage and family is a stabilizing force in our society. It's an odd thing to me that the people on the religious right who argue against gay marriage think incorrectly that if you have gay marriage, people will choose gay marriage over straight marriage. It's an odd idea, but I think that's really what they're saying. But in fact, people don't choose to be gay, but if you allow gay people to marry, they will have the same kinds of stabilizing forces in their relationships that you see in heterosexual marriages.
I don't think the matter of what the gender is in a couple is as important as the nature of the relationship itself, how people are treated, what the values are between the two people and how they live. That's much more important to me than what the gender identity is.
Marriage is such, and here's where I agree with the right wing on this, it's part of human tradition. That's not God-given, and it's actually, the Torah doesn't even say that, even though they say that it does. That's another one of those complete misreadings. But it is part of human history. It's something that we've done, and we all want to be a part of that.
There's many examples of people changing their religion for love, changing the way they live their life for love. So I would say that love is a pretty powerful emotion, and when it's real, it really surpasses all the rest.
Love is a simplistic way to put it. I think it's more about dignity.
I'll say this about love and divorce. Sheila and I were together 11 years before we gained a legal license to be married. There was no law keeping us together. As a matter of fact, everything was trying to drive us apart. Some family issues and society in general. But we loved each other and stayed together. Our legal license is sort of a supplement to that. It's just a way of protecting each other. It's not a significant representation of the love we have for each other.
If you can't get married, then you do feel truly like a second-class citizen, forgetting about what the specific rights are. I'm speaking about dignity here and decency.
I know my son has a lot of friends who have adopted kids, and man, they seem to be very happy people, and everything seems to be working out quite well. My son has been in over a 20-year relationship with this guy. They seem to be very happy.
And as a parent, I would want my children to be able to get married whether they were gay or straight. Period. I want them to be part of the community. I want them to feel that they're welcome as part of the human community and not be given a second category, a separate but equal kind of category, which is simply not the same. We know that historically in America, so we should be better than that now.
Kelly, this is Renee, Corey, Shelby. Renee and I met at a soccer game. Renee played soccer for years and years, and
I was playing.
Yep, you were playing. And I was watching with Frankie from church.
Some people we played softball
Some people I played softball with played soccer. I didn't play soccer. And I was there to watch them play. And Renee was there. Yeah, we went to P-Town and got married. We've been here in the house for...
About 5 years.
June will be 5 years. Yeah. So we bought the house on my birthday. And we always have big expenses.
Big birthday presents.
Birthday presents. And then the following year I bought a truck. It was really cool. We have 4.
Between us.
Between us. We each have a boy and a girl. Renee has Megan and Corey. Megan is in San Francisco. She's 28. 28. She's in San Francisco. We're going to visit her. And Zachary.
This is Corey.
And this is Corey. I'm sorry, baby.
I'm the forgotten child.
Corey will be 17 in July.
June. I'm lying.
Kelly, you're killing me.
Harley has 2 children. Zachary is going to turn, he's at GCC in college. He turns 19 in June, this June.
Right.
And Shelby's sitting right here, and she can't wait because she's turning 16 in July. Yeah.
Adam and Eve. There's no story in Buddhism, Adam and Eve. So there's man, woman together and so forth. I mean, there's not such story in a Buddhism. So that's why in Buddhist term it doesn't matter. But maybe Judeo-Christian, if they start like those story, then that should be the ideal figure.
So when it comes to homosexuality, the idea that it's an abomination for a man to lie with a man or a woman with a woman, I don't think that's true. It's not an abomination. It's actually a very beautiful thing. Why is it beautiful? Because it honors the deeper scriptural message of love. And I interpret all texts from the point of view of love.
Love is everything, we say. You know, love is the cause of the origin of the universe, of existence itself. And it's expressed by saying that, you know, God had a longing, and this longing to be known. And so out of that innate longing came forth creation. So love is the origin of everything, and everything is really in a state of love. So Sufism is to help make this clear to us, what our great place is in the drama of love.
Within the Hebraic biblical perspective on the world, where a man and a woman and the propagation of the species are paramount and become the most important fundamental relationship between the human being and the divine. In fact, in some medieval sources, that is actually when the Bible describes the creation of human beings in the image of God. That image of God is identified in some medieval sources as the capacity to create.
It's hard to read back because we read back through our own view of things. For example, it has been traditional to say that in Greek classical society, women had virtually no role whatsoever. Well, I was recently at an exhibit within the past couple of months at the Onassis Foundation looking at the role of Greek women in Greek religion, and they had an enormous role. An enormous role. It's not true. So in other words, I'm not saying that classical Greek was filled with feminists, but at the same time, the view that they were just absolutely nothing is being called into question. It's like the lens that our culture was looking back on it rather than a true view of the culture itself.
For Jews, frankly, every one of those things that you would call a direct command has been interpreted through 2,000 years of interpretations and, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of volumes of text trying to understand what it actually means.
Then there's a whole science of translation called hermeneutics, and different generations translate things differently.
These Leviticus passages, and there are a couple others. They really are so dated that it's hard to even think about them or to take them seriously. It doesn't mean that I don't take Scripture seriously.
We're not actually fundamentalists. Even the most Orthodox Jew does not read the Bible literally, reads the Bible through the prism of rabbinic interpretation.
The virgin shall give birth is the classic example. It doesn't say virgin, it says young woman. So you have an entire Christian tradition based on a simple mistranslation.
So, you know, there's a lot at stake in acknowledging that homosexuality is natural, you know, and there are many thorny theological and philosophical issues for an Orthodox person when they look at the Old Testament. Now, someone like me doesn't have to worry about it because I don't believe that the Bible is the Word of God, literally. I don't believe in an inerrant Scripture that has been unaffected by culture and by human frailties and human fingerprints.
Usually those rabbinic interpretations fall pretty far from the literal meaning of the text itself.
From a psychological perspective, the use of ancient text to support one's belief system is what I call a procedural defense. There's always a rule somewhere that one can use that doesn't need to be analyzed at all to support a position that one wishes to take. And so if you really are against homosexuality, you really don't have to go any further than a quotation of that passage. It doesn't really require any deeper thought or insight.
Scripture is gorgeous. It's the heart of the Word of God. The main way Jesus implied inclusiveness was by the way he lived. He was always going outside the village and getting his arms around the whole village. He talked more to women than he talked to men, which in that time was ridiculous. Nobody talked to women. Some people even say he was crucified for eating with the wrong kind of people. People who were sinners, people who were criminals, people who were prostitutes, women, people who were sick. So Jesus was always behaving as one who included all people. And people really didn't like that. The boundary-dissolving rebel who really didn't respect human boundaries. What I love about Jesus is he's so pithy. It didn't take him very long to say it.
Upon being challenged, Jesus replied with the parable of the Good Samaritan. A man was beat and left at the side of the road. First a priest walked by and did nothing. Second a Levite passed by. He also ignored the man. Then a despised Samaritan stopped by, picked up the man, soothed his wounds, and took him to an inn. He paid the innkeeper to take care of the man and said, if his bill runs higher, I will pay you the next time I'm here. So Jesus challenged, which of these was a neighbor to the man attacked by thieves? The man replied, the one who showed mercy. And Jesus said, yes, now go and do the same.
Jesus doesn't even talk about homosexuality at all, and I think there are a couple of quotes there from Paul and in Acts and such that deal with it, but there's nothing specifically ascribed to Jesus on that issue.
It's a straight human issue. It's immoral to be against it. The churches are immoral, and they're using this phonyism like that for slavery. They do the same thing with slavery. What they are, they're immoral. They're trying to make it as a moral issue. It's baloney. They are immoral by taking that position, and no one should follow that position.
I believe that the references to homosexuality in the Bible were not necessarily made as a loving couple.
Stir the meatballs every now and then.
I will. If you're going to go with us, I'll be ready to go because we're going to be coming in and changing and taking off. And I believe that the Bible has been translated and interpreted so many times. The first forms of the Bible, the word homosexuality didn't even exist.
The president was in the news this week. He sent out a presidential memo saying that most hospitals have to recognize other than legal family for the purpose of making decisions about health care and for visiting. So basically, he's helping all kinds of couples across the country to be able to have access to their loved ones who are in the hospital. And this is a big deal. I'm remembering...
So I'm going to have a little bit of fun here. And so this is going to be in the style of Garrison Keillor's A Prairie Home Companion. Reverend Jim Mulcahy was out for a stroll the other day. Reverend Jim is pastor of the Saints of the Pink Boa MCC. Our local progressive church. Jesus is our model of the life that God intends for us to lead. And it is also Jesus as our Savior who makes that life possible.
If you're talking about historically, I mean, there are different types of marriage. Here only one, right? In the history, of course, this is a marriage like one and many, but then, one wife. I mean, and then maybe it could be 3 or 4 men too, but then which is fine for that particular society. But then the other way around, one man and many women is also fine. But then, of course, here, there's no, right?
What churches are out to do is control your body, control your sexuality. And that's part of their control system. We don't go, that's not where we are. You be what you are. And we have no problem at all with what your sexual orientation is or isn't.
Wicca is far more concerned with what I would call, as a former Catholic, I would call moral theology than dogmatic theology.
There's no such thing as a gay wedding in Buddhist teachings, but we work with what we've got. We're Buddhists, we're priests, and we wanted to commit to each other in a very ceremonial way. And our teacher said, why not? And it's not the first time it's been done either, right? Right?
So, I like to say, listen, if you have a heart that beats, please come to our synagogue. We want you. It's kind of like we're building a bonfire for God, and you bring the log that it is your log, your life experience, your heart, and please put it on. It'll warm all of us.
If you go to a pagan festival in the United States today, it's not all Gardnerians, of course, it's a wide variety of Wiccans and other kinds of neo-pagans. You will inevitably find a strong presence of gay men and women, and totally accepted, totally having an important function like anybody else does within that festival or that society.
In terms of the heart, learning to love all of this manifest universe and all of its different colors and shapes and sizes, and so there's a kind of an eco-diversity within the community of people who are very different and see the world very differently, but can coexist in this wonderful place.
In terms of Buddhism, it's always emphasized importance of how you choose your life, or how you live your life, and if that's happen to be the style of life, as long as you choose and you be responsible of everything, then that's totally fine.
In the area of homosexuality in particular, making it a space that's safe for people who sex differently, to come and sex the way they sex, and say, oh yeah, this too is one of God's most beautiful things, just this is the way it is.
What's important is the ethical, and it is usually summed up for a Wiccan by, if you harm none, do what you will. That says a couple of things. Obviously, it emphasizes not harming anyone, but it also, in effect, emphasizes that as long as you abide by that, you should do what's right for you, not what is demanded by somebody else or what the society says or whatever.
When they ask the question, how can you have what is your foundation of human rights? I look to the UN Charter of Human Rights, and that by far is much more comprehensive. The problem with most religions, they're based upon the concept of life 2,000 years ago, when slavery was legal, women didn't have rights, children didn't have rights, people didn't have rights of housing, healthcare, etc. The United Nations is not perfect, but it's much more comprehensive.
At every successive stage of complexity, the stage that emerges, ideally, in an ideal world, will include the salient, important, healthy features of the previous stage, and so that in every growth we transcend what came before, but we include all of those important pieces. And what's wonderful about that notion is that there's a kind of holarchy, a nesting, and not a hierarchy, but a holarchy. There's a nesting of complexity, that in every stage you can see the earlier stages expressed in their healthiest forms, and you moving forward. And the danger of that is that there's a transcendence and repression, or transcendence and exclusion. And that in various stages of human history, there have been stages of growth where we have repressed to our detriment.
Pick a culture, and if you know anything about it at all, you will find deities and heroes who are, again, they would not have used these words at the time, but who screw around with their own gender as well as with others.
According to Japanese myth, Shino Nahafori and his lover Ama Nahafori were the servants of a primordial goddess. Upon the death of Shinu, Amma had committed suicide from grief. According to custom under the eye of their goddess, the two lovers were buried in the same grave.
There are some particularly famous stories of heroes. One of the famous stories is how Zeus is just totally enamored.
Zeus, looking down upon the earth, saw Ganymede, the most beautiful and handsome of mortals. Zeus fell in love with Ganymede, so he turned himself into an eagle, swept down, snatched up the boy, and brought him back to Mount Olympus for all the gods to see. Zeus loved Ganymede so much that he gave him a place in the stars for eternity.
I've discovered within my own faith, within Hinduism, is a plethora of stories and traditions of multiple forms of intimacy, desire, and love, and expressing your body in multiple ways. That's not necessarily this normative reproductive sort of format.
There are a number of cultures which have specifically seen gay men or women, what we would call gay men or women, as being particularly suited for priesthood, precisely because they walk between the worlds, precisely because in a sense they are neither this nor that. It allows them to see all things. So many Native American cultures, for example, will have what the French call the prejudice, which is as much about gender. It is more actually about gender than about who one does or doesn't sleep with. For example, in a lot of those traditions, a biologically male prejudice, acting the part of a female, will marry another male. That male is not seen as different from anybody else in the tribe.
Looking back at Navajo culture, the history of it, and the way we became a people, it's my understanding that the Navajo story is that there was a time where we were merging through the four worlds.
During a time of great infighting and strife between the Navajo people, the men and women decided to live on opposite sides of the river. They all found out that life was very hard that way. But amongst both camps were Nadle, or two-spirit people. The Nadle were able to perform the tasks of the opposite sex, and in so doing often dressed like the opposite sex, thus sustaining the camps and providing invaluable balance. So in the end, the two-spirit people helped to reunite the Navajo men and women and their families.
If you look at Khajuraho, if you look at Kama Sutra, if you look at stories of Lord Shiva, Vishnu sleeping and Lord Shiva looking at his navel and feeling an erection, it's replete, of all these stories.
Two close families discovered that they were having children at the same time. The fathers, who were the fastest of friends, made a pact that their children would marry. However, both the children turned out to be girls, so the father of Bija hid this fact and disguised his child as a boy, likely after the dowry of his friend. The two did marry, and Tija discovered Bija's secret, but they in fact fell in love of their own accord. Tija, knowing Bija's secret, encouraged her to be her true self, so they lived as two women for a time, but the villagers eventually would no longer tolerate it and drove them out of the village. Tija and Bija ran deep into the neighboring forest to escape the wrath of the villagers. Here they came across the spirits of the forest. The spirits allowed them to stay, and they lived in solace for a time. But they both longed to go back to their communities, so they asked the spirits if they might turn Bija into a man. And they did. And the two in fact returned to their village and lived there. But something strange began to happen to Bija. She started behaving oddly, and in fact quite violently towards Tija. So Tija decided to run back into the woods and beg the spirits to please turn Bijou back into her true form. And they did. And that's where Tija and Bijou remained, happy and in love, till the end of their days.
Interestingly, and I bring this up because most people don't know this either, the only intersex people, the only transsexual people in either Bible are eunuchs. And they're pretty common at different times. The book of Esther is filled with them. Isaiah talks about eunuchs all the time and says eunuchs are in a class above typical male and female. God loves them more than typical male and female, and the Israeli Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem, is named after a phrase in the sentence in Isaiah chapter 5 that deals with why eunuchs are such wonderful people. Now, there are different types of eunuchs. There are those who were forced into eunuchhood. There were those who chose it because it was a career path that they wanted, and there were those who were born eunuchoid. And we know this because the Talmud dealt with this issue, and the Greeks did too.
In the Plains tribes, you find a lot of their stories and their ceremonies that actually would have a ceremony to allow the boy or the girl to determine their gender role. In the Zuni tradition, they have Wewa. She's it's basically a male guy who transgendered into a woman within the culture and became widely accepted. In Navajo culture, we have a lot of deities in our culture, and primarily the one story that always comes out, and I actually in fact heard it from my father about Nudle, is they call her a changing woman. She basically embodies both a male and female spirit, but not only that, but is also considered to be hermaphrodite.
Again, you see it in the mythology. You see it in Plato, for example. Plato talks about in the Symposium, which is his treatise on love, and he gives a variety of explanations about how they're going around a supper table and each one's telling their own story. And one of the stories there, for example, is how originally humankind was all double-sided, so that one human being had 4 arms, 4 legs, 2 faces, right, facing the opposite way. And some of these dual creatures were male-female, some were male-male, and some were female-female. We pissed off the gods, and as a punishment, split in half, and so now everybody is now searching for their other half, all right? And that is his explanation of love. Now, that's an explanation which obviously honors heterosexual relationships, but also male-male relationships and female-female relationships.
God made man and woman. It's clear, right? Well, actually, no, it's not clear, so I would get up and say, you know, according to Jewish tradition, the first human created was intersex. It was a hermaphrodite. And then God split that hermaphrodite into Adam and Eve, and voila, here we are. So no, it's not quite as simple, even in our human traditions from 3,000-4,000 years ago.
First of all, the Garden of Eden is based on an earlier Babylonian myth, the myth of Enkidu, which is also a nature boy living in a garden. And again, it's love and sexuality that just kind of makes everything confused.
The examination of sexuality, homosexuality, and gender can be found within the mythologies of most religions and cultures throughout the world's history. We find, for instance, the spirits of voodoo, including Baron Samedi, often depicted as bisexual or transgender, as well as Erzulie Frida, known to be a protector of gay men, and Erzulie Danter being a patron of lesbians. The Maya have Popepili, considered to be a patron saint of homosexuals. In Africa, the Dahomey tribe have Malalisa, who is their creator deity and is both male and female. In China, Taoists have the tale of the rabbit god, about a man who fell in love with an imperial inspector, but when his infatuation was exposed, he was sentenced to death by beating. But since his crime was that of love, officials of the underworld appointed him the rabbit god and patron saint of same-sex relationships. And in Australia, the Aboriginals share a similar myth of the rainbow serpent deity, expressed as being transgender. In Hawaiian mythology, the powerful goddess of fire, Pele, has a sexual affair with a Hawaiian chiefess who desperately searches far and wide for Pele after Pele leaves her behind. It is telling that while it is easy to find myths that portray gay and transgender characters positively, it is nearly impossible to find ancestral myths that directly portray them in a negative light.
What religions have done is they've closed the path, and that is a terrible thing, that they've cut the way off for people who are homosexuals or transgender.
There's nothing in either Bible that deals with gender variance specifically as we understand it today.
I don't believe God makes mistakes. I don't think the world is created in vain. I believe that God created a diversity in the human experience, in the animal kingdom, in the natural world, which is profound.
We're all on the spectrum, and there's that denial of the spectrum. And it's so refreshing just to think like, oh right, well, of course we're all on the spectrum. How could we only be one thing?
A heterosexual orientation means I'm attracted to someone of the other sex. A homosexual orientation means I'm attracted to people of the same sex. And a bisexual orientation means I'm attracted to both sexes. A gender identity is not the same thing as a sexual orientation. A gender identity can be separate. So a gender identity is the sense of myself as being either a man or a woman. And I can think of myself as a man and be attracted to men or women, and you see people in all those kinds of variations.
Sex has multiple components. I speak of generally the basic ones, the chromosomes, X, Y, all sorts of combinations of those. There's the genitalia, there are the gonads, which are critical, there are the other reproductive organs, there's the body habitus, the way human bodies develop throughout time, men being bulkier and taller than women. There's a sexual dimorphism to that too. Then there are secondary sex characteristics which come at puberty. Most importantly, there's brain sex. And brain sex is the underlying substrate for gender identity, which is your sense of being male and female. It depends on how your brain is wired. The general public has understood this. We often speak of, when it comes to sexual relationships, that sex is between the ears and not between the legs. That's true with sexual relationships, but it's also true as far as who we are. Our brain sex is between our ears, it is not between our legs.
I think because the culture at large tells children that there are only two genders, boys and girls, men and women, that when kids discover that they have same-sex attractions, they do get confused.
Freud and those who followed Freud, particularly the reparative therapists like Nicolosi and others like that, really believe, still do today, although that generation is dying off, that a boy knows that he's a boy because he looks down and he sees that there's a penis there.
It's not gender confusion that causes same-sex attractions. Sometimes same-sex attractions can cause some gender confusion.
And then his father may simply encourage him and say, yes, that's a penis, you're a boy, and that's how it develops. We've now proven that that's not true, that there are human beings with different types of congenital variations. The one that Dr. Bill Reiner used when he proved this and published his paper in the New England Journal of Medicine was a condition called cloacal exstrophy. These XY kids don't have a penis or anything that resembles it, and they're sewn up after birth and put back together and surgically reconstructed. But the question was, well, are they going to believe that they're male or female? Traditionally, in surgery, any child that was born with ambiguous genitalia would generally be recreated, recrafted, re-engineered as a girl rather than a boy, simply because of the surgical dictum. It is far easier to create a vagina than it is to build a penis. It's still the case today. When you have a Freudian perspective, it's appearances that matter far more than one's innate feelings. And even today, they will disparage us and say, oh, how do you know that you feel that you're a woman? What is that? That's complete nonsense. What does it mean to feel that you're a woman?
I don't happen to be transgender. So when somebody says, people I know say to me that I've always felt, I'm biologically male, so-called, but I have always felt that I was female, I have no reason not to take their word for it. who am I to say that I know them, although I've just met them, better than they know themselves?
Nature? This isn't open for debate. You know, any doctor, any pediatrician, any obstetrician knows that human beings are born with all these differences.
Regardless of whether you're a twin or not, you're still never going to be the same person. And each person has different makeup of who they are. If you look at the trees, and if you look at the grass, and you look at the water, and you know, you take 2 samples of water from 2 different locations, they're never going to be identical. You know, there's always going to be an element that's in nature that's going to make it unique from one another.
We are what we are today because of evolution, which acts on difference. A friend of mine, Milton Diamond, Professor Milton Diamond, Mickey Diamond, who's also a Bronx Science grad, who's our leading intersex researcher in this country. He says, it's very funny, he goes, biology loves diversity. Couldn't function without it. Human society abhors it. It's a very interesting psychological and philosophical conundrum.
At the core, we're sexual beings. You know, we're not human beings. We should call ourselves sexual beings. And sexing and sex in the sexual act, particularly, is is such a powerful crucible for human transformation and for the crystallization of human consciousness.
It said that Allah looks at nothing but the human heart. So what have we done in our life that will make our heart full of light, full of love?
So how did you guys meet?
We met here at the village center.
And what did you guys, who came up to you first?
Depends who you ask.
Okay.
No.
What? No, he seduced me. See, it depends who you ask. Look at this smile. We have a story.
I told Zachary first. I don't know why. I think the opportunity presented itself and I took it. And I don't know how old he was, maybe 12, 14, 13. And then I told Shelby maybe 2 years later. And they both took it well, I think. I think their big thing was that meant that I was not going to be supplying them with a stepfather. I felt they needed to know at some point. I waited until I felt like they were old enough and that they could process it. They did both do well, I thought. I think that combining our families was a little difficult on all of them. Not just Zachary and Shelby, but on Corey too. They're all 3 very independent children and very strong-willed in their own ways.
I get very defensive when people say stuff about it during school, like, because some of my friends' parents have problems with it, and I'll talk to like my friends about it, just because I don't get what they're saying. So it's like they'll say it's against their religion or something like that, but it's like God made you this way. If it was like wrong, He obviously wouldn't make you that way.
It wasn't really until I met her that's when I finally decided that I wasn't going to continue, I guess, living the lie. And then when I met her and my feelings were strong enough, you know, Corey obviously knew that we would go out or, you know, we would see one another. He's a funny boy. He's perceptive and he's funny, and he was just, you know, I know that makes you happy, Mom, and I'm okay with it.
I really don't care if they have a problem with it, because I don't. I understand it's their choice and they want to do what they want. Like, it's what makes them happy. And if other people can't accept it, that's kind of their problem to me. You know, I always fight on their side, and I'm always going to have their backs on anything, you know. Raise me like a son.
My mom was very kind to me in telling Megan that, what was her term, that
You can't change the way a river flows or something.
Something on that order. So, and that's sort of how she explained it to Megan, and so, which was nice. And I think that it helped Megan just sort of accept that that's really who I had always been.
Here comes the camera, honey. You're going to be on whether you want to or not. Can you,
There you are.
Oh, thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. Yes.
Can you see the camera?
Yes.
Look at Arthur, he's leaving.
We met at the Zendo, and through...
Well, the pre-story.
But that's way too long and involved.
That's very short. The pre-story is 7 years before we officially met. He came to the Zendo, and I was like, so happy. And then he never came back for 7 years.
Wow.
He just came that one night.
And you felt something that one night?
Yeah. I was like, and then he didn't come back, and then
I did come back. And I was in a relationship actually when I came back to the Zendo. And I saw Kosha, and I guess what happened was 7 years later I had the same feeling of...
The vast majority of Americans are fair-minded, but they are the ones who keep saying that this is a religious issue, when frankly it's not a religious issue.
It's really important that we continue on the belief system that this country was founded on. The separation of church and state was one of the key issues and basis for our Constitution and our setup of government. And I think that it's a telling thing that we're back to the reason people came to this country in the first place, which was for religious freedom and a separation between their government and their religious beliefs.
The civil marriage license should have nothing to do with their particular religious beliefs. And nobody would infringe on their churches, the Mormon Church, the Catholic Church, or other churches' desires not to participate.
We're saying we have a welcoming sign out there that you should be with us, because we don't think religion really will ever accept gay people, because it's against basically Christianity. And they have to turn everything over to accept it. So it's a tough problem for gays. And I think that one way that gays could be more effective than trying to change say religion as religion, is if they start seeing them come atheists, they're going to really start changing.
Welcome back to the Ed Show, and thanks for watching tonight.
And civilization requires the family, which means a mother and a father raising a child.
Yes, there are no studies that show that, period. Simple as that. There are no studies that show that. And I'm talking about double-blind independent studies. Sure, I can get a rabbi someplace who say the following things.
It's prohibited, homosexual activity.
Okay. The ideal place to raise a child is in a home with a mom and a dad.
People on the religious right believe that you need a man and a woman to provide role models for children growing up so that they'll learn how to be either a man or how to be a woman.
Untrue.
Yeah, that's untrue.
I'll call the false on that.
Well, your mom wasn't at all. Your dad wasn't. Like,
No, not hardly.
No.
I mean, if that were the truth, then there wouldn't be homosexual people to begin with.
Sexuality and marriage, which is an institution that we know has generational implications. I'm concerned about the next generation.
I understand the idea, but when you really look at it closely, it makes no sense because it's not consistent with the reality of how people grow up. People have uncles, they have aunts, they have school teachers, they have neighbors. Everybody sees what the conventional roles of masculinity and femininity look like, even if they don't have a straight couple for parents. People on the religious right often say that kids do better with a father and a mother. Actually, the literature doesn't support that.
Our statistics show that it's a very, very low percentage of abuse in gay families. And I think the reason is because we work so hard to have our families. A religious marriage is not what we're seeking here. It's two very separate things.
You do not have to believe in God to be a moral and ethical person. And it's true.
It wasn't until the 1900s that God was added to the Pledge of Allegiance.
The bottom line is we are not a Christian nation. We were not founded as a Christian nation. And there was something called the Treaty of Tripoli. After we had the Revolutionary War was over, the Americans were in commerce. And when you went out the coast of Africa, northwest Africa, The Moors were in control, and every once in a while they'd capture one of our ships. And they would, when they captured the ships, they would take the sailors off the boat. And since they were not Muslims, they were infidels, and they were put in slavery. And there was well over 100 Americans who were captured that way and were in slavery, so it was a problem. So the United States negotiated a contract with the Moors in that area, and what it said in that treaty, we are in no way founded on or are a Christian nation. It was started with George Washington, it ended up with Adams. Adams physically signed it, so two senates, 2 years in a row, voted for this treaty, which is still into existence, and it says point blank that we are not and we're never a Christian nation. So the documentation is there.
I respect another person's religious perspective, which says that they will not participate in or officiate in a gay marriage. That's simply their right. I have no problem with it. In fact, I support their right to not participate in such a ceremony.
It's a civil rights issue. It's the civil rights issue of the 21st century, I've heard.
What I do object to is that they take their perspective, their particular religious belief, and impose it on us as a civil society.
We're not interested in thought control. If you want to believe in a flying spaghetti monster, you want to believe in a flying teacup, that's your business. But don't make it public policy and don't shove it down everyone else's throat.
What do we want? Equal rights! What do we want? Now! We've come here tonight to lift our voices and to let our light shine.
We need to demonstrate, we need to stand up, we need to tell everybody who we are.
We've come here tonight because the denial of equal rights sets a standard of second-class citizenship, and we will not be second-class citizens.
Harvey Milk said that they vote for us 2 to 1 when they know who we are. We're their doctors, we're their lawyers, dentists, we're everyone.
We will not go quietly into the dark. We will march and we will organize. We will fundraise and we will fight. It has not been easy and it won't be easy. But together we'll do what is hard and we'll achieve what is great. We will fight like every other oppressed group has done in the history of the United States.
You need to go home this holiday season and you need to tell your family who you are. You need to tell them that you're gay. You need to tell them that your friend is gay and you support them.
I say to our counterparts who fought for women's rights, did you believe in the rights for all people or was it just your own? I say those who fought for civil rights of African Americans, I say, was it for all people or was it just for your own?
I have proxy. I have her medical paperwork. I can go in there. What's going on? Well, we need to talk to her next of kin. You can't get any more next to her kin than I am, honey. I sleep with her every night. What's going on with my partner? And they're telling me they have to call our daughter in Arizona from New York to ask what medications she's taking. I'm the one that put in the little cuppies every day. I'm the one that says, honey, did you take your meds? I'm the one holding the piece of paper both of us have signed to protect us from ever happening, from ever going through this. And I'm the one standing out there giving them the phone number to our daughter in Arizona, who then is panicked and hysterical over, but my mom's in the hospital. I don't know what medication she takes. Where's my nether mother? Where's my nether mother? Something's wrong. My nether mother would never be there. My mother would never be in the hospital without my nether mother. And there's this moment of terror for all of us, which is so unnecessary. Marriage eliminates it. It just eliminates that.
My uncle was gay. This is not something that was new to me when I came out to my parents. And the main reason I was emotional is not because I felt perverted, not because I felt different, but because I knew that my mom's heart would break when she finally realized that I might not be able to have a normal family in America recognized by the legal system and recognized by my fellow Americans.
When I was married to women, people perceived me to be a straight white guy. Right? Is that the truth? well, to them it was the truth, and certainly socially that was my truth. Did I feel that way? No.
People sometimes kill themselves because they can't deal with the diversity within them. They take drugs. They will check out. So they'll be like a robot, kind of just going through their life and not really, they're just kind of really shut down, or depression.
I had so many issues around my sexuality and not understanding my lifestyle, my decision to do that, and so I abused a lot of drugs and alcohol, and finally got to a point where understanding my spiritual component and understanding my culture, that it's okay to be who I am.
That's who I am. I can tell you that. That has nothing to do with what others are perceiving me as being. Not that that's not important, because I could get killed because of how others perceive me.
To look at her and to think that someday we might be able to be married is the greatest thing. That's the day that I'm looking forward to. And if that, don't cry. If that, like, the fear that might not happen is just, it's terrifying to me, because she's basically my whole life. And I've had problems and been in the hospital before, and because my mother doesn't like her, she's fought to keep her away from me. That's why I'm here with everyone fighting, because I want to get married here. I want to have that right, and I think that we all deserve it.
We are all equal, period. My feeling is I serve my country, and suddenly I'm less than a citizen because I love Renee. That doesn't make any sense.
Time will keep us all in line, while suns and moons keep passing by. And ride on, my sweet friend, and ride on till the end.
Both of us, firsthand, although there's a lot of discrimination and prejudice, we have felt it on both sides, because both of us have been married to men before, and gone through that, and now see the difference in how people treat us differently because we're with one another, and that there really shouldn't be that distinction at all.
What? You know you want to say something.
I think the biggest thing really is just that people have a preconceived conception of gay people in general, and they're thinking about the like the flamboyant men that you see on TV, or the really butchy women that you see, and they don't realize that there's so many people that are just walking down the street blending in with everyday life, and they happen, when they go home, they've happened to go home to somebody that's the same sex.
It's really hot.
You do this every dinner.
I know you really do, every dinner. It's really hot. No, the steam was see that steam.
All the steam coming off of it should have been my first clue.
How was your avocado?
It was really good. Did I leave any in there? It's a good avocado.
Did you eat the whole thing?
Yeah. His wife liked it too. They like avocado too. Touche. So you're teasing me about the avocado is wasted.
Once they get to know you, who you are, they don't, all of that sort of goes to the wayside, because they're getting to know you for who you are and not some label that somebody's put on you. Yeah. You don't have, and I think that that's the hardest thing, is that you generally are living with a label first and have to prove to people who you are, and it should sort of be the other way around. you know, get to know who I am, and then you can decide if you want to label me one thing or another.
There's a million different ways you could go. How do I know my way? Well, I just know.
And so tonight, I would like us to show the world what it looks like when gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender people pray. This may be one of the first prayers at our rallies, but I want to go and step out in faith and offer this prayer for us. Please pray with me. A true invocation of love for our country.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a road, and it'll lead to somewhere. And in my mind, it's as clear as the daylight. And I'm standing on this road, as long as you're right beside me. And it's not the answer, but the questions that make it right. Yeah, I'm sure it's a road, and it'll lead to somewhere. And in my mind, it's as clear as the daylight. And I'm standing on this road, and right now, that's all that matters. And it's not the answer, but the questions that make it right.
I think you might want to turn on the light down before you look at Arnold. I need to birds. Oh, that was a good one.